They say death is the only thing you can't outrun. But what if you did? What if one morning you woke up on the day you were supposed to die and nothing happened? Would you celebrate it? Would you believe you'd been given a miracle? Or would you start to notice the world around you fading slowly, quietly, as if something else was paying the price for your extra time? Tonight on NightLore, this is the confession of a man who outlived his death and discovered what it truly costs to keep breathing when fate says you shouldn't. This story is called The Day I Outlived My Death. I grew up in a town where everyone knows when they'll die. It sounds impossible, I know, but for us, it's as normal as breathing. When a child is born here, the doctor gives the parents a small certificate printed neatly stamped and signed. At the bottom is a date, not a birthday, a death day. It's said that our founder made a pact generations ago. Something about keeping the town safe, predictable, orderly. Whether you believe that or not, the truth remains, no one has ever outlived the date on their certificate. Not once. People in this town don't fear death. They plan for it. They throw farewell dinners, write letters, prepare wills, sometimes even book the cemetery plot years in advance. It's tradition cold, but comforting in its own way. We grow up knowing exactly how much time we have. Some people find peace in that. Others break under the weight of it. I thought I'd be one of the peaceful ones. My name is Ethan, and according to the small faded paper I've kept in my wallet since childhood, I was supposed to die on March 9th, 2023, the day after my 45th birthday. The week before, I remember feeling calm, detached. My co-workers at the library threw a little farewell party for me. Coffee cake, a few old jokes. My sister cried, of course, but I comforted her, told her everything would be fine. Everyone said that. Everything will be fine. They always do when the date comes close. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, touching the things I'd collected over the years. Old books, photographs, little pieces of a quiet life. I remember pausing by the window and watching the streetlights hum through the fog. It was a cold, still evening, the kind where the whole world feels like it's holding its breath. I went to bed, certain that I'd never open my eyes again, but I did. The light hit my face before I understood what was happening. For a few seconds, I thought I was dreaming. Then I felt my chest rise, once, twice, and the panic set in. I looked at the clock, 6:32 a.m., March 10th. My death date had come and gone. I remember sitting up so fast, the sheets tangled around my legs. My pulse thundered in my ears. The morning sun looked wrong, too bright, too yellow. I grabbed my phone. The date was correct. My hands trembled so badly, I nearly dropped it. The first person I called was my sister. She answered groggily, her voice hoarse. "Ethan, what's wrong?" I was half laughing, half crying. "I'm alive." There was a long pause on the other end. "That's not possible." Her tone shifted, not to relief but confusion, maybe even fear. "I woke up," I said. "I shouldn't have, but I did." Another pause. Then quietly she whispered, "You need to come over." Her house smelled like coffee and lavender candles. She looked pale, tired, as if she hadn't slept all night. She hugged me, but her hands were cold. We sat at the kitchen table. She kept staring at me like I might vanish. "I don't understand," she said. "No one ever outlives their day." I tried to smile, tried to joke. "Guess I'm the lucky one." She didn't laugh. "Ethan, this isn't luck. The doctor signed that paper for a reason. They all do." Her voice shook. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I brushed it off then, told her it was a miracle, that maybe the doctors had been wrong all along. But inside, a quiet dread began to grow. Because deep down, I knew the town never makes mistakes. When I walked home that afternoon, people stopped talking when I passed. They looked at me differently, not in wonder, in unease. The kind of silence that follows a scream you can't hear. That night, I dreamed of the certificate. It was lying on the table edges, curling ink, bleeding like veins through the paper. In the dream, the date shifted. The numbers twisted, blurred, and finally disappeared altogether. I woke up gasping. For the first time in my life, I was afraid to look at the clock. The next few days felt surreal. Everyone in town knew, of course. Word travels fast here. People crossed the street when they saw me. Some whispered prayers. Others shut their doors. My co-workers at the library pretended nothing had changed, but I saw how they avoided touching the books I'd handled. I heard them mutter when they thought I couldn't hear. Outlived his date. Shouldn't be possible. Unnatural. It was like I'd become a walking curse. But I tried to ignore it. Tried to live normally. For a while, I even felt happy-free. I went for long walks outside town. I watched the sunrise over the fields. Every breath felt like stolen treasure. But the more I embraced it, the stranger things became. The first sign was my watch. It stopped ticking. The hands froze at 6:32, the exact moment I'd woken up that morning. I tried to reset it, but the second hand refused to move. The metal felt cold, too cold, as if it had been sitting in snow. Then I noticed the flowers. My sister had given me a small bouquet that night, lilies her favorite. By morning, they had wilted into brown husks, petals curling like burned paper. I replaced them. The new ones died within hours. Even the air inside my house began to feel thin. The lights flickered whenever I entered a room. My reflection lagged behind in the mirror, just by a second, but enough to notice. I started sleeping with the lights on. One afternoon, I met Tom, my oldest friend, for coffee. He was the only one still willing to see me. He tried to act normal, but his hands kept fidgeting. He looked pale, his eyes sunken. "You look tired," I said. "Yeah," he muttered. "Everyone's been feeling it lately. Don't know why." When our cups touched the coffee between us, rippled faint but visible, like the surface of water disturbed by breath. Tom noticed it too. He pulled his hand back, staring at me. What the hell was that I didn't answer? That night, Tom texted me, "Don't come by for a while, okay? Just need rest." I never saw him again. That's when I began keeping notes. Dates, times, patterns, the little changes. March 15th, my houseplants died. March 16th, my phone battery drained every time I touched it. March 17th, my neighbor's cat vanished after I fed it. The more I wrote down, the clearer it became. Wherever I went, life dimmed. I wasn't just outliving death. I was taking something from everything around me. After Tom stopped answering my calls, the silence in my house grew thicker. It wasn't just loneliness, it was physical. The air felt heavier. My steps echoed too long in the rooms. I tried to distract myself. Read Clean Cook, but every task ended the same, with something breaking or dying in my hands. The bread went moldy before it cooled. The fridge hummed like it was struggling to breathe. Even the walls seemed to sigh at night, expanding and contracting like lungs. I told myself I was imagining it, that the stress was getting to me. But then came the smell. Rot. Subtle at first, faint sour like old fruit. Then stronger. I searched every corner, every pipe, every cupboard. I found nothing. It wasn't the house that was decaying. It was me. My skin grew pale, almost translucent in certain light. My veins stood out dark and purple. I looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks, yet I dreamed constantly. Always the same dream. I was standing in the middle of the street. The entire town was still. Every door open, every window dark. And from each shadow, something watched. Something that had my face. One morning, I decided to go outside again. I thought fresh air might help. The sky looked washed out, colorless. The grass under my feet was brittle, snapping like dry paper. When I reached the edge of town, I noticed people staring. They didn't speak, but I could see it in their faces, fear. A child tugged at her mother's sleeve, whispering, "Mom, is he dead?" The woman pulled her close and hurried away. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked halfway through. That's when I saw my reflection in a shop window. It wasn't quite right. My movements were slightly delayed, my expression not matching the feeling on my face. My reflection blinked slower than I did, and when I looked away, it kept staring for a second longer. I ran home. That evening, I sat at my desk, hands shaking, and opened my old journal. I hadn't written in years, but I needed something real, something that couldn't flicker or fade. I wrote everything down: the watch, the flowers, Tom, the reflection. Then I noticed something that froze me. The ink on the page. It wasn't black. It was gray, faint, like it was dying even as I wrote. The next morning, my sister came by unannounced. She looked awful pale, sweating eyes ringed in red. She tried to smile, but it collapsed halfway. "Ethan," she said softly, "I can't sleep anymore. Every night I dream of you standing in my doorway, just watching." I wanted to tell her it was just a nightmare. But then I realized I'd had the same dream. Me standing in her doorway, unable to move, unable to speak. I felt sick. "Maybe you should rest," I said. "I can't," she whispered. "When I do, the lights in the house flicker. They flicker in time with your heartbeat." I had no words. When she left, I cried for the first time in years. Because I finally understood. I wasn't supposed to be alive. And whatever force had let me slip past death was feeding on everything else to keep me here. There's an old woman in town. People whisper about the oracle. She lives near the woods in a crooked house with boarded windows. As kids, we used to scare each other with stories about her, that she could see your death date just by looking into your eyes. That she kept a book with every name in town written inside, crossed out one by one. I never believed any of it, until now. I went to her house just after sunset. The sky was purple and bleeding into black. The air smelled of rain and smoke. The door creaked open before I even knocked. Inside was darker than it should have been. The shadows seemed thicker, heavier. The air was dense with something like incense, sweet but not comforting. She sat at a small table, surrounded by candles that didn't flicker. Her face was a map of wrinkles, her eyes pale and milky, yet somehow they saw everything. "You shouldn't be here," she said before I could speak. Her voice was low, like it came from somewhere deep underground. "I didn't have anywhere else to go," I said. She didn't move. "The town knows. The ground knows. You've broken the rhythm, Ethan." Hearing my name from her mouth made me shiver. "I didn't choose this," I said. "I just woke up." "No one chooses," she replied. "But death always collects what it's owed." Her words sank into me like ice water. "What's happening to me?" I asked. "You're taking what isn't yours," she said. Every breath you draw steals it from someone else. Every moment you linger drains the world around you. You're not living, Ethan. You're feeding. I shook my head, backing away. That's not true, isn't it? She gestured toward the window. Outside, the trees near her house were brittle and gray. Even the grass had died in a perfect circle around the path where I stood. Look, she said. It follows you, like a shadow that eats. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. Can I stop it? I whispered. The oracle leaned closer. Her breath smelled like dust and rain. To stop it, you must give it back. Give it back. How she reached into the folds of her robe and pulled out a small vial filled with liquid, so clear it shimmered like glass. Drink this when you're ready. Return to the place you defied your death. The balance will take care of the rest. I hesitated. What happens to me? Her lips curled into something between a smile and sorrow. What was meant to happen? When I looked down at the vial, the light from the candles bent around it, like the world itself wanted to stay away. I stumbled out into the night, gripping the vial in my pocket. The streets were empty, every house dark. The silence was heavy, suffocating. For a moment, I thought I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned, no one was there. But the street light above me flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. I walked the rest of the way home in darkness. For days, I kept the vial on my nightstand. I told myself I'd use it when the time felt right. But when is it ever right to die? Each morning, I woke to a house quieter than the day before. The clocks had all stopped. The lights no longer worked. Even the sound of birds outside had vanished. Sometimes, I thought I heard whispers in the walls. My own voice repeating things I'd said days ago. I barely recognized myself in the mirror anymore. My skin had a dull gray sheen, and my eyes looked hollow, as if something was staring out from behind them. On the fourth day, I found a letter slipped under my door. No return address, just my name written in neat handwriting. Inside was a single line. Please end it. We're dying. No signature. I didn't need one. That evening, I walked through town one last time. People watched from their windows but didn't come out. Their faces were pale, sickly drawn. A few looked half asleep, swaying like ghosts. As I passed, lights flickered behind me, dying in sequence like falling dominoes. At the end of the street, I saw Tom standing outside his house. He looked thinner, older. His eyes sunk deep into his skull. Tom, I called. He didn't answer. When I got closer, I saw why. He wasn't breathing. He stood there motionless like a mannequin. And yet his eyes followed me as I passed. I ran. Back home, I locked the door and sat in the dark. The vial shimmered faintly on the table. Outside, the wind had stopped. I realized then that it wasn't the world that had gone silent. It was me. The sound of my heartbeat was gone. The pulse in my neck had stilled. I should have been terrified, but all I felt was tired. For weeks, I thought I'd cheated death, but death had never left. It had just been waiting, patient, hungry, for me to understand. I wrote one final note in my journal. If anyone finds this, don't mourn me. I wasn't supposed to be here. Then I picked up the vial. It was lighter than I remembered, almost weightless. Inside, the liquid shimmered faintly, reflecting a light that didn't exist. I uncorked it. The smell was neither sweet nor sour, just still. I raised it to my lips. The moment the liquid touched my tongue, everything around me went quiet. The air stilled. My body froze mid-breath. And in that silence, I heard a heartbeat. Not mine, the town's. For the first time since the day I woke up, it was steady again. I smiled. Then the floor fell away. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't sure I had any left. Everything was light, blinding, endless, swallowing the edges of my vision. For a moment, I thought I was gone, that this was what the end felt like. Then I heard the wind, soft, distant, and beneath it, birds. I was lying in the middle of the field behind my house, the same one where I'd stood the morning after my death date, when I realized I was still alive. The grass beneath me was warm. The air was heavy with the scent of rain. For a few seconds, it almost felt like peace. Then I saw my hands. They weren't grey anymore, not pale or cold. They looked normal, but they didn't feel like mine. They felt hollow like a glove with no hand inside. When I stood, the world wavered. The horizon bent like liquid, and for a heartbeat, I saw something beneath it shape silhouettes moving slow and steady. I blinked and they were gone. I turned towards town. The sky above the rooftops was golden clean. Smoke rose from chimneys again. For the first time in weeks, I heard laughter faint, carried on the wind. And for a terrifying, beautiful moment, I thought the oracle had been right, that I had fixed it. I walked down the dirt road, each step lighter than the last. My house looked alive again. The windows reflected sunlight, and the flowers in the yard, the ones that had turned to dust, stood tall and bright. But as I got closer, I noticed something strange. The door was open. I called out, but no one answered. Inside, everything was spotless. My journal sat on the desk, closed. The vial was gone. And on the kitchen table, laid neatly, was my death certificate. Only the date had changed. The old one, March 9th, 2023, was scratched out. Below it, in faint, careful handwriting, was a new one, March 23rd, 2023, today. The room tilted. The air thickened until I couldn't breathe. It wasn't over. I hadn't escaped death. I'd only delayed it. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The sound echoed sharp and metallic, bouncing off the walls. Then something else answered. Footsteps, soft, slow, coming from the hallway. I froze. The air grew cold, so cold, my breath fogged. I turned my head slowly, painfully, and there, standing in the doorway, was me. Same face, same eyes, same small scar on my chin. Only wrong. His skin was pale, his eyes too dark. His smile stretched just a little too wide. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Because when he blinked, I felt it in my own chest, like my heart had skipped to match his rhythm. I couldn't move. He took one step forward, then another. With each step, the room dimmed. My body felt heavy. My pulse slowed. When he was close enough to touch, he leaned forward and whispered something I couldn't fully hear. It sounded like my own voice, echoing back from a deep, hollow space inside me. It's time to go home. The world shattered. Light exploded behind my eyes, white and endless. I fell through it, tumbling, without weight, without sound. Somewhere above me, I heard the oracle's voice. Balance always returns, Ethan. One way or another. Then nothing. They found my house empty 3 days later. The door was unlocked. The lights worked again. The air smelled like rain. On the table, there was no journal, no vial, no certificate. Only a faint grey ring burned into the wood, shaped like the bottom of a glass. My sister told the police that I'd been struggling, that I'd gone missing before. They searched the woods, the fields, even drained the pond near the edge of town. They found nothing. But the town changed after that. The flowers grew again. The air felt lighter. People started smiling, more laughing louder. For the first time in years, everything felt alive, except for one thing. Every morning, exactly at 6:32 a.m., the lights in my old house flicker on, just for a few seconds, then off again. No one can explain it. The power company says the lines are fine. The neighbors say it's probably a faulty timer. But my sister swears that when she walks past, she can see a figure in the window, just standing there, watching. She won't go near the place anymore. Last week, someone new moved into town. A young couple from out of state, drawn in by the quiet life, the beautiful scenery. They say they never heard about our death date tradition. No one talks about it anymore, not openly. But when their baby was born, the doctor gave them a small envelope, white sealed with the town's crest. Inside was a piece of paper. Printed at the bottom in neat black ink was a single date. They thought it was a birth certificate. It wasn't. Sometimes late at night, I wonder if I'm really gone. If I did what I was supposed to do. If the thing that looked like me went back to wherever it came from. Or if I'm still here in the walls, in the quiet hum of the power lines, in the flicker of that light at 6:32. I can almost feel the house breathing with me. Every night it exhales, the air grows colder, heavier. Every morning, it inhales again, pulling something new inside. Maybe that's how the balance stays. Maybe that's what I am now. Not alive, not dead. Just part of the rhythm. And maybe one day, when you wake up after, you shouldn't have when you find the world just slightly off. When your reflection blinks too slow, you'll hear it too. That faint heartbeat behind the silence. Not yours, not mine, ours. And you'll understand. No one ever truly outlives their death. If you're still here, take a deep breath. Feel your pulse. That steady rhythm in your chest. Ethan thought he could escape his death date. He thought he was lucky. But maybe the balance always finds a way to even itself out. So the next time you wake up at 6:32 in the morning and the light in your room flickers for just a second, ask yourself, was it just the power, or did someone else borrow a little more time last night? Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to NightLore, and turn on the bell. Because some stories are meant to be heard in the dark.